so that parents that are unable to do this at this time have access to the information within it.
Y la única razón que estamos grabando es para que todos los padres que no pueden asistir pueden tener acceso a esta reunión.
Great. So we introduced our reopening timeline last week. I think that it's safe to call it a timeline, and to families and to our staff last week. And so we just want to use this time to have an open forum and address any questions, concerns, thoughts that you have about the timeline, and just talk about it openly as a community.
La semana pasada hemos introducido el tiempo de regresar a la gente que trabaja en el colegio y también a los padres y las familias. Y entonces esa noche es para, ustedes pueden preguntar qué preguntas tienes, algunas preocupaciones y también pensamientos de nuestro tiempo de regreso.
Great. So I'll just open it up. If people want to put them in the chat or come off mute, you are welcome to ask away or to, talk. So.
Voy a abrir la plataforma si ustedes quieren hablar en voz alto o si quieren poner en el chat, puedes hacer cualquier cosa.
Quickly recap. So the plan is twofold. The first sort of like phase of the plan is the restart of community care for students that would begin on February 8th. The main changes that we're going to make to community care is that we are going to keep students in grade alike bands so that we don't have the instances of like a student having gym class at the same time another student is having like their science class, for example. That was a main point of feedback that a lot of parents, teachers, students had for us as we exited community care and talked about re-entering community care. Following that, community care will go until the week before spring break. At that point in time, teachers will be back in the building. We're using that week to allow teachers to set up their classrooms at the same time they're remote teaching. And so during those days, we'll start asynchronous learning at 1 o'clock every day of that week so that teachers can use that 1 to 3:45 time to prepare their rooms for in-person instruction. In-person instruction will start the week after spring break for any student that is interested in joining. The number of students that we have interested and attending in-person instruction will kind of dictate what our plan looks like specifically. Our hope is that, if our numbers mimic the CPS numbers, we think that with the capacity of our classrooms, we may be able to do a 4-day week for our students to start with. But if we exceed the number of sort of available spaces, we'll move to a 2-1-2 model, meaning 2 days on, 1 day of remote learning, and then the other cohort of kids attends their in-person instruction for the other 2 days of the week. That is about as quick and like high level of an explanation of the timeline as I can give. And I apologize to Molly because that's a lot.
Okay, I'll start. El plan tiene doble parte. El parte 1 es que vamos a empezar con el cuidado de la community care que hemos empezado el 8 de febrero. Y el cambio principal a la cuidado de comunidad, community care, es que vamos a tener las estudiantes en grupos diferentes por el nivel del grado. Eso era que muchas familias nos dijo que era mejor, por ejemplo, que la clase de gimnasia no es el mismo tiempo de ciencia para otros niños, entonces mejor que los niños, las estudiantes en otros grados están separados. Y la community care van a ir hasta la semana antes de la Semana Santa o la semana de descanso. Y en esta semana los maestros van a regresar al colegio y van a enseñar remoto, y también van a empezar con sus clases regulares hasta la 1 virtualmente, y también van a empezar a poner las cosas en las clases um, eh, para estar listo para los estudiantes. La segunda parte es que la instrucción en persona van a empezar 2 semanas, Mr. Keebler, 2 weeks after spring break, in-person classes will start.
1 week after spring break.
Una
So,
semana después de la Semana Santa vamos a empezar con las personas en clase para los que quieren ir al colegio. Entonces, ¿cómo vamos a empezar? Vamos a mirar a los números. Si están parecidos de los de CPS, puede ser que podemos empezar con 4 días. Si está más que los estudiantes que están en CPS con su forma de hacerlo, vamos a empezar con una 2-1-2. Por ejemplo, un grupo de niños van a ir 2 días, un día virtual, y el otro grupo van a ir 2 días.
great. Um, Eric Perez asks if they were already in community care, do they re-enroll? Yes, we want you to fill out that form again and indicate that they'll be coming back for community care, just so that we have an accurate count of numbers. You only
For
need to,
each student.
yeah, but you only need to fill out the form 1 time for each student.
Si estaban en el community care, tiene que hacer el formulario otra vez. Sí, por favor, hacer otro formulario, uno por cada estudiante, para que tenemos los números perfectos.
We send the form out multiple times to remind people. Right now, our numbers are a little bit low from what I would expect with people filling it out, but that could be because people are waiting to hear about this meeting, which I'm totally fine with as well. But expect to get some reminders with the form, and if you filled it out, don't worry about filling it out again, even if you get the reminder.
Hemos mandado ese formulario a todas las familias. Ahora los números para los estudiantes para Community Care son un poquito bajo que estamos esperando. Entonces vamos a mandar algunos más recuerdos, pero si ustedes han llenado el formulario, no tienen que hacerlo otra vez.
Great. Emmy Flores asked, how was the community care last semester, and were there cases of COVID during the semester? So the entire time we had community care from the start of it, right towards the beginning of the year, till the end of first quarter, right before Halloween, we only had 1 case the entire time where a student that was in the building had a positive test. In that case, I'll tell you just openly what we did. As soon as we found out about the case, we met with the parents that were had students in the classroom and let them know that we have to shut the classroom down. At that point, the recommendation was for 2 weeks. And so that's what we followed. We shut the room down from the last time the student was in the building, from 2 weeks from that point, and then reopened the community care classroom while post-quarantine. Siblings of students in that class at that point in time were required to quarantine as well. But only one case in about, 2.5 months.
La pregunta era si en la community care habían casos de COVID positivos. Entonces la respuesta es, hemos empezado el año con community care y hasta antes de Halloween. Entonces en todo ese tiempo solo teníamos un caso positivo en el edificio en todo ese tiempo, y un estudiante tenía un caso positivo, y el momento que sabíamos, tuvimos una reunión con todos los padres de todos los estudiantes en esta clase, y cerramos esa clase por todos estos estudiantes en el grupo. También los hermanos de este niño tenían que hacer el quarantine por 2 semanas, que era la recomendación en ese momento. 2 semanas desde el momento que el niño estaba en el edificio, que todos los estudiantes en el grupo no estaban. Y en todo ese tiempo solo teníamos un caso.
Aaron, is there anything you'd add to that at all?
The only thing I would add is that we did not have any community spread within the building. So the one positive case was because of an interaction that happened outside of the school. And the student wasn't feeling well. The parent did everything they were supposed to. They kept the child home. We enforced all of the quarantine. And there, like I said, there was no community spread. So we did not have to close the building.
Y también ella quiere añadir que este caso no se fue para otras salas en el colegio y tampoco a otros niños. Ella tenía, la persona tenía la infección que era afuera del colegio y los padres hicieron todo perfecto y el niño estaba en la casa cuando no sentía bien y no fue para otros niños ni otras clases tampoco.
Will community care be dismissed at 2 o'clock or 3:30? And if so, will there be any type of extended daycare for parents who don't get off work till later? Community care will continue to go until 3:30. We know that that's like that time, you know, from the 2 o'clock dismissal until 3:30 is important for parents to have that childcare. So it's we're going to work to make it 3:30, and we're going to work, you know, that may change when we have in-person instruction, just depending on the number of people available to have that extended time, but we're trying to make it happen. So that's that, like when in-person instruction happens in April, that may be something that changes, but trust me when I say that I'm trying to figure it out. So.
La pregunta era si community care van a hasta las 2 por la tarde o las 3:30. Y cuando empezamos en febrero van a ir hasta las 3:30. Entendemos que este tiempo es importante para los padres y entonces queremos tener ese tipo de apoyo para los niños y las familias. Este puede cambiar cuando todos los estudiantes están en persona. Entonces en abril, cuando abrimos más, puede ser que este está cambiando porque de la cantidad de estudiantes, pero confía en mí cuando yo digo que estoy tratando con mejor esfuerzo que podemos seguir con ese apoyo.
Will students be with the same teacher from the first time? I'm assuming that from community care. Some of those teachers have moved on to other things. You know, I can, Eric, to speak to your situation specifically, you know, that room had a great relationship with their teacher, and you know, I think that if it ain't broke, don't try to fix it. You know, we would try to keep students that were in situations similar to that, where there was a positive relationship and the grade levels lined up well with those teachers, but it's not necessarily a guarantee. But it's something that we'll look at.
La pregunta era si community care, ellos van a estar con el mismo grupo y maestros. Y algunos profes han salido y están haciendo otras cosas, pero si el maestro está y es un buen grupo y hay sentido con los grados, vamos a quedar con los mismos grupos y era bueno para todos.
When will they have a teacher in the classroom with like remote learning? That would be the week after spring break. Can you look at the calendar?
It's April 12th. April 12th.
I just couldn't remember it off the top of my head. So April 12th will be that start date. And you know, we'll continue to utilize some of the programs that we use, but trust me that we want to try to cut down on screen time as much as possible, obviously.
Cuando los niños van a tener la profesora principal en la clase con ellos, era la pregunta, y es la semana de abril, 12 de abril, es la fecha de los niños van a empezar con la profe principal. Vamos a usar algunos de los mismos programas, pero queremos quitar la cantidad de tiempo en frente de la pantalla.
Will teachers be teaching both in person and remote at the same time? Yes, that's what we're thinking. Aaron, do you want to talk about some of the reasoning that went into that decision from sort of like the network level? I'll say that option was that attended are in like Irving Park focus groups. A lot of parents responded well to that one in particular, but Erin, do you want to talk about from a larger perspective, what I think?
Sure. Based upon health and safety regulations that we know we're going to have to continue to enforce, and I see the question about temperature checks and the screenings. So yes, we have the daily symptom screener, the Pickup Patrol app, which will roll out for everybody when students start coming back on February 8th. Temperatures will be taken, masks will be enforced, and social distancing will be enforced. So we will have no more than 15 students in a classroom with 6 feet of space. So because the teachers are not going to be able to circulate like they would in a normal circumstance, kids will still have to log on to their devices when they're in the classroom and when they're home. And then that is because teachers can't do what they would normally do in a traditional school year in terms of circulating the room, small group instruction, pull out, things like that, because we do need to keep 6 feet of space between the adults and the kids.
La pregunta era si las profesores van a enseñar en persona y virtualmente al mismo tiempo. Y si las profesores van a enseñar a la misma vez. Y eso era una opinión popular con el grupo de los padres que estaban en la reunión virtualmente hace algunas semanas. Y también que Erin dijo es que vamos a seguir las guías por seguridad, entonces vamos a chequear los síntomas de cada niño cada día, vamos a tomar la temperatura y también los niños van a usar las máscaras todo el tiempo y también vamos a tener 6 pies de distancia de cada niño y también de cada adulto. Entonces por eso que los niños van a estar virtualmente, porque los profesores no pueden estar en toda la clase como siempre con esa distancia de 6 pies. Entonces tenemos que utilizar esos programas virtual y también porque los profes no pueden tener los grupos pequeños ni el apoyo 1 por 1 como antes en un año tradicional.
Do we want everyone to fill out the form even if they don't plan to go into school until April? Yes, we want everybody to fill out the form, even if you're not planning on attending in-person instruction in April. We want to know. So that we can start to think about numbers and think specifically about how it's going to look within the building. So, yes.
La pregunta es si las familias que no van a asistir en persona debe llenar el formulario. Y sí, por favor, llenar el formulario si no van a asistir, porque queremos saber esos números también, si los niños no van a estar o si van a estar, para que tenemos números exactos.
Can you explain the 2-on-2 model? Can't recall the name, where students attend certain days and not on other days. In this regard, what if both parents work and students would need to attend community care every day? This is a really good question. Erin,
You want me to take it?
Yeah, would you mind?
No, not at all. So our goal right now is to provide community care starting February 8th for any and all families that are interested. We do have capacity thresholds for the building, roughly 40 to 50% of the student population. So based upon our fall attendance, we are hoping to be able to accommodate all families interested in community care. Molly, I don't know if you want to translate and then I can go to concurrent.
Yes. What was the question?
What if parents work and need community care every day? So we're hopeful we can provide community care to all families that are interested in community care. And then I can talk about what happens in April.
Si las familias que quieren, la pregunta es para si las familias que necesitan community care y asistir al colegio normal todos los días, el 8 de febrero vamos a empezar el community care y podemos tener 40 hasta 50% de la capacidad de la población estudiantil y si tenemos la misma asistencia, más o menos del número del otoño, podemos proveer para las familias.
Our goal right now for April 12th, when we return to an in-person instruction model, is that we will have, again, enough capacity in the building to provide instruction to students instead of having to do a 2-1-2 model, that we would have the ability to have kids in the buildings 4 to 5 days a week, that there wouldn't be the A and B day. That will be contingent upon the number of families that indicate they want to return for in-person. If we have more families that come back for select in-person learning, then we can safely accommodate we will have to convert to a different model. But our goal is to be able to have kids in, like I said, 4 to 5 days instead of having to go to like a 2-1-2. But that will be dependent completely upon space and how many families indicate they want to return for in-person learning on April 12th.
Nuestra meta para el 12 de abril es para tener la instrucción en persona para 4 a 5 días cada semana para todas las familias y estudiantes que quieren estar en el colegio. Si tenemos más personas que quieren asistir al colegio en persona, tenemos que mirar a otra forma de hacerlo, por ejemplo, el 2-1-2, pero nuestra meta es para tener todos los estudiantes 4 a 5 días cada semana para apoyar.
Are kids going to be able to interact with one another? Like returning to school is about being as near normal as possible. Yes, along the same lines of all the sort of like social distancing and mask wearing and that kind of thing that we need to respect in order to keep everyone safe. But you know, I think that the kids in community care can tell you that there's a good amount of student interaction that's able to take place even with those stipulations and safeguards.
La pregunta es si los niños pueden interactuar con todas esas regulaciones y si los niños pueden interactuar con el otro, con esos estándares de seguridad, por ejemplo, con máscaras, también con la distancia social que tenemos que tener. Pero las que estaban en el community care pueden decir que pueden interactuar con otros niños suficiente con todas esas regulaciones también.
For those that haven't been inside the school yet, will the students be able to tour the school on their first day so they know where to go? That's definitely something that you know, our teachers will have to cover on that first day, is where to go, you know, if you're sick. You know, how are we getting out to recess when we go? So those kind of things will be covered by teachers. It'll be very similar, I think, on some fronts to the first few days of school in a kind of like August, September, with some of the procedures and things that'll need to be established with students, especially our younger students.
Para los que nunca he estado en el colegio, van a estar un tour, algo así para que los niños sepan dónde van a ir. Y sí, los profes que están encargados de los niños van a enseñar dónde deben ir. Por ejemplo, dónde debe ir si no siente bien, dónde debe ir para ir al recreo o también el baño. Van a estar parecidos a los primeros días y semanas del empieza del colegio, como en agosto, septiembre. Pero sí, ellos van a enseñar esto especialmente para los niños más chiquitos.
Thanks, Rachel, for the kind words. Appreciate it. Means a lot. If teachers are teaching both in person and remotely, what's the plan for that going smoothly? This is a big sticking point for how CPS is struggling with their plan right now. You know, one of the things that we know is that this is going to be a challenge. There's no other way to put it. Our teachers know it's going to be a challenge. We're talking about it. Some of the things that we want to put into place now are budget contingent. I can tell you that I've made very careful choices in the money that we've spent this year to try to open up as much funding as possible for this transition that we kind of expected was coming. So our hope, without guaranteeing anything, is to have some level of support within the classroom to be a little bit of a bridge in between the online learning and the in-person instruction. So for example, Miss Mandel has a resident teacher within her room. You know, in that classroom, you know, Mr. Orphan, who's a resident teacher, could play a pretty big role in ensuring that, you know, there's the students that are online are attended to with the same level of attention and care that the students in person are. Now, I'm not saying that wouldn't happen if Mr. Orphan was there, but as any teacher will tell you, like the more hands you have lightens the load, you know, on deck lightens the load. So, there's some talk about like, could we have some of our community care leads transition into support roles like that, as well as community care would come to an end possibly during that time. And so that's part of the model that we're trying to figure out. We're doing it in conjunction with our teachers. We wouldn't want to do this without our teachers, since they're the ones that are going to be living it every single day. But it is going to be challenging. We are going to make some mistakes along the way. We're going to learn from those mistakes, and we're going to get a little bit better every day. And so I know it's going to be hard, but we have a great team that'll come together and work hard to make it the best that it can possibly be. Sorry, Molly, for the long answer.
La pregunta es si cómo van las profes si van a enseñar remoto y en persona y virtual al mismo tiempo. Y voy a decir que eso van a ser un reto. CPS está luchando con eso en ese momento. Entonces van a ser un reto para todos y sabemos esto. Algunas cosas que yo quiero poner, que yo he estado trabajando por todo ese año, es para tener el dinero para alocar a esa parte de apoyo. El dinero puede ser, el apoyo con el dinero puede ser un puente para la instrucción virtual y también la instrucción en persona. Por ejemplo, ese tipo de apoyo puede ser en la forma de un profesora residente. Por ejemplo, en el 6º grado tiene una profesora residente que puede ser que él está manejando el parte virtual mientras Ms. Mandel está trabajando con la porción en persona para que los dos grupos tienen una buena experiencia. Entonces, las más manos pueden apoyar con este tipo de experiencia para cada niño y cada grupo. También estamos hablando de tener las profesoras, los líderes de Community Care, para que ellos puedan quedar con algunos profes durante ese tiempo. Y también estamos trabajando al lado de las profesoras que van a estar funcionar en la mejor manera que posible. Sabemos que esto van a ser un reto. También vamos a hacer errores, vamos a mejorar y tenemos un muy buen equipo trabajando con este enfoque.
Great. Sorry, let me that place. In April, all students will come back to school, or will they have the option to do in-person or remote learning? The option. We're not requiring that all students come back into school in April. Will the remote learning students get the same?
Translate.
Thank you. En abril, ¿todos los niños tienen que regresar al colegio o tiene la opción para regresar o hacerlo virtual? Todos los estudiantes tienen la opción para regresar en persona o virtual. Es una opción.
Will remote learning students get the same attention as the in-school students from their teacher? That's our intention. I mean, we believe that every student should have an equitable, experience. And so we know it's going to be hard to balance those things, but at the same time, we can't not pay attention to a student that's in the remote setting just because they're in the remote setting. So it'll be something that we're working hard with and trying to balance, like I said.
La pregunta es si los estudiantes que están aprendiendo remoto van a tener la misma atención de la profesora que en persona, y la respuesta es que eso es la intención. Queremos que todos van a recibir la misma tipo de instrucción, la misma atención para tener algo igual, y estamos trabajando mucho en esto. Entonces queremos la misma atención para cada niño.
Just somebody wanted a refresher on the 2-1-2 model. So in the 2-1-2 model, students may be completely remote. The students that want to stay remote, students that opt in to the in-person instruction would, if we had an excess of students that, than what our capacity is, we would have to divide them up into two groups. An A group going on Monday and Tuesday for in-person instruction, and then doing virtual learning Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, and a B group doing virtual learning Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and in-person instruction on Thursday and Friday. Our hope is that we can do in-person learning 4 to 5 days a week.
La pregunta es, ¿qué es el 2-1-2, el modelo para enseñar? Y todos los estudiantes pueden estar completamente remotos si quieren, eso es la opción, pero los estudiantes que escogen para estar en persona para el aprendizaje, la meta es para 4 a 5 días, pero si hay demasiados estudiantes que quieren estar en persona, tenemos que hacer algo por ejemplo, el grupo A van a ir al colegio lunes, martes y tener virtual miércoles, jueves, viernes. El grupo B van a estar virtual lunes, martes y miércoles y van a estar en persona jueves, viernes. Pero la esperanza, queremos que los estudiantes estén en el colegio que quieren estar 4 a 5 días cada semana.
You're on mute, Mr. Keebler, just so you know.
Sorry, there's a frenzy of cleaning happening right outside the door. Okay, let's see. How are teachers feeling about going back to in-person?
And just so you know, Mr. Keebler, we have a handful of teachers that are here joining us, so we're
I don't
really
want to put
excited.
anybody on the spot, but if they're willing to come off mute and talk real quick before I go on to that, I said 4 to 5 days a week. What I meant is 4 to 5 days a week for all students that opt in to in-person learning. That's our hope, but the numbers will dictate that.
Para hablar sobre la capacidad de los estudiantes en persona, eso depende en la cantidad de estudiantes que quieren regresar. Si hay demasiado, tenemos que hacer algo 2-1-2, pero si si tenemos capacidad para tener todos los estudiantes que quieren estar en persona, pueden ir 4 a 5 días.
Great. Teachers are nervous. It's change. Change is hard. This is a significant change. A lot of the teachers have, the vast majority of teachers, I'll say, have not been back in the building since all this began, coming up on almost over 10 months now. And so I think it's hard. One thing that I think is helping things is that people are starting to get vaccinated. Teachers are starting to get vaccinated. And so personal safety, we know that, the transmission kid to kid isn't necessarily, if you've read any of the research that's come out recently, if mitigation efforts are in place, student to student transmission is low. And Aaron can speak to that more specifically in just a minute, but that doesn't mean that adults in the building couldn't transmit it to one another. And so the vaccine coming on and having teachers that have had the vaccine and, talking about how their arms are sore, I think is weirdly making people feel a little bit better about the whole situation. And if there are teachers that are on the call that want to, like I said, come off mute and talk about your personal experience, I'm open to that as well. So.
La pregunta es cómo sienten los profesores a regresar al colegio. La respuesta es, los profesores son nerviosos, eso es un cambio y un cambio es difícil. La mayoría de las profes no han estado en el colegio por 10 meses desde todo eso han empezado. Entonces, yo creo que una cosa que está ayudando es que la gente y los profesores están tomando la vacuna. Entonces, sabemos con la información que está, que los niños, si hay la fuerza de eliminar como la distancia, las máscaras, que para los niños para transmitirlo es muy mínimo, pero para adultos es diferente. Entonces, pero yo creo que esta conversación sobre la vacuna y que estamos empezando esto está ayudando. También hay otros profes aquí en esta reunión si quieren hablar.
two more things I'll add just before like if teachers want to chime in, they're welcome to. But number one is that like I think also teachers are excited to see kids. Teachers are like we have middle school teachers that like when I talk about somebody being tall in a community gathering, have no idea that the kid that I'm talking about is topping out at like 6 feet these days. They don't like there are certain kids that some of these teachers don't even really know what they look like, and so that's hard for a teacher. That's not why we what we signed up for necessarily, but it's the reality of this time. And so I think that they're excited at the prospect of getting to do in-person instruction. I think that they see it as more effective possibly than the remote instruction, and especially for students that they're struggling to reach. They want to teach, they want kids to learn. And so there's even for the ones that are nervous, I think that some of them see this as a possible benefit for students. Secondly, every teacher's situation is different. Sorry, Molly, I'm going a little bit long. If you want to like translate that last part, and then I'll talk about.
Yep. Y también yo quiero añadir que las profesoras están emocionados para ver los niños y las estudiantes. Por ejemplo, cuando yo hablo de un niño sobre la altura, puede ser que la profesora no tiene ninguna idea sobre la altura, ni puede ser que la profesora no sé cómo lucen los niños. Y eso no está por las profesoras querían ver los niños, obviamente. Entonces está difícil que eso está pasando así, pero es parte de la realidad de estar enseñando virtualmente. Entonces, claro que sí, que las profesoras están emocionados para ver las estudiantes en persona. Puede ser que es más efectivo para enseñar a algunos niños, especialmente que los niños que están ese tipo de instrucción está muy difícil. Entonces, eso puede ser un beneficio para que las profesoras vean para los niños también.
For some of our teachers, they've been incredibly careful during this time, some of them have seen, can count the number of people that they've seen in person outside on two hands. And we're asking them to come into the building and be in classrooms with, 14 kids, 13 kids, 14 kids, depending on the size of the classroom and the number of adults within those classrooms. That's an incredible change for them, and so that's, we've got to recognize that, and we've got to work with that, and try to meet those teachers' needs. And so there are a lot of different feelings. There's a wide spectrum on it. And so, and then childcare as well is a major concern for some of our teachers as well.
También, otra cosa que algunos profesores no han estado con mucha gente durante ese tiempo. Algunos pueden contar las personas que han visto en ese tiempo en 2 manos. Entonces, eso es un gran cambio para algunos, para estar en una clase con 14 personas, y eso estamos escuchando también, y estamos notando que las profesoras también tienen esas necesidades, y estamos trabajando para que esto funcione para todos. Y hay muchos sentimientos entre los profesores, no solamente uno ni otro, pero muchos sentimientos. Y también algún reto es también para cuidar los niños de las profesoras también en ese tiempo.
Okay. I don't want to cut off any teacher that might want to chime in. Time.
I think JW, just based on time and some of these other questions, we should probably keep going.
Will students still wear uniform for community care and in April? During community care, we definitely did not require uniform. I'm unsure about April. I doubt it, just with the number of orders and things we would have to get together. I'm sure Christy is like on pins and needles about it, but I don't see how we could start requiring a uniform by April. When in-person learning begins, will students be
Wait,
staying?
Translate.
Oh, sorry.
Los estudiantes van a estar en una necesidad que los estudiantes usen el uniforme en Community Care o en abril. En Community Care, los niños no tenía que usar el uniforme y me imagino en abril no van a estar una necesidad tampoco con todas las otras regulaciones que estamos siguiendo.
When in-person learning begins, will students be staying in just one classroom the entire day? Will they be having lunch in their classroom? The majority of their day will be spent in one classroom to reduce the amount of exposure each kid has. We're working on, one of the things that I think we have to do is provide recess and opportunities for movement. So we'll be working on a recess schedule to make sure that every kid has movement built into their day that's in person. We have done lunch in the classroom, and I think that that's a practice that we would continue from community care to in-person instruction.
La pregunta es, cuando una persona, si el grupo de estudiantes van a estar en el clase por todo el día y también tener el almuerzo en un clase, y si la mayoría del día van a estar en un clase por la mayoría del día, obviamente vamos a tener tiempos de recreo afuera y entonces estamos trabajando en un horario para los tiempos de recreo para cada grupo, pero en Community Care tuvimos el almuerzo en la clase y esto funcionó.
Will enrichment teachers remain remote when the kids go back to reduce exposure? Also, what about support staff such as speech? We don't have a clear plan for enrichment just yet. We want to partner with them. And that's also something that I think, we need some sort of thought partners with the network and to see what other campuses are thinking and that kind of thing.
Sure,
Erin,
and I'll jump in on this. Yeah, so the expectation is that by March 15th, all of our staff members will be back on campus, all of our DS employees. So that does include related service providers and enrichment teachers, that we would have all staff back on site by March 15th.
Yeah, but not necessarily traveling from class to class.
No, every building will be different on how we handle specials and the movement in the buildings, and we'll come back to how many kids come back to the building, because that will dictate how much movement we can have.
Related service providers like speech, Erin.
If they're DS employees, they will be back as well.
Okay.
La pregunta es si las clases especiales y también otra gente que enseña, por ejemplo, los tiempos de discurso, que tiene tiempo con los niños, cómo van a ir ese horario para ellos. Y la respuesta es que no tenemos un plan claro todavía. Vamos a estar hablando con esas profesoras específicamente y también tenemos que hablar con el network y otra gente para hacer esa solución y ese plan. El 15 de marzo, todas las que trabajan en el colegio van a estar en el colegio, pero no necesariamente que esos profes van a ir a clase para enseñar. Todavía necesitamos un plan para la gente que vea muchos estudiantes.
And Lauren Glass, the speech provider specifically, is a DS employee.
Y también la profesional para el discurso, para la enseñanza de discurso, es parte de nuestro distrito también. Entonces, ellas van a estar en el colegio.
Mr. Keebler, we just skipped over a question about the capacity cutoff for the 4 to 5 day in-school instruction.
So it'll depend on the number of adults and the number of students in each room. For example, if Ms. Houlihan's class has a capacity of 12 students and 3 adults, and 13 kids want to come back to her class, that's when we would look at the 2-1-2 model. That's an arbitrary example, but it's around 12, 13, 14 students.
About 250 students. We're gonna, next week when administrators come back, we're gonna do another walkthrough just to reconfirm all of our numbers from the fall. But roughly, if we have around 250 or more kids indicate they want to come back, we can't accommodate all of them. So we'll have to look at different options to accommodate all students.
La pregunta es qué números son la capacidad para el colegio para ir 4 a 5 días cada semana. Y eso depende en los números de estudiantes. Por ejemplo, en la clase de Ms. Houlihan, si ella tiene capacidad de 12 estudiantes y 3 adultos, por ejemplo, si 3 estudiantes quieren regresar, tendremos que mirar a otro modelo. Y la capacidad es 250 para todo el colegio. También vamos a mirar el colegio otra vez esta semana para estar seguros sobre la cantidad y la capacidad de estudiantes.
When in-person learning resumes, will school end at 2 o'clock? I think this goes hand in hand with the next question. Is the in-person a full day? Yes, like right now, our intention is to end instruction at 2 o'clock. There may be some options for care until 3:30. We're working on it.
La pregunta es si las estudiantes están en persona, si el día de instrucción van hasta 2 o hasta 3:30. Y la respuesta es sí, estamos mirando el día de colegio va hasta las 2 por la tarde, pero el apoyo para Community Care esperemos que van a ir hasta las 3:30.
And then Mr. Keebler, there's a question a little bit further down that can relates into this around what students would be doing for that one, like if instruction's ending at 2 o'clock, what are students doing until 3:30?
I think it would be basic kind of like after school club enrichment kind of things with the possibility of having some study hall time in there as well.
La pregunta es qué van a hacer las estudiantes si el día instruccional termina a las 2, qué van a hacer las estudiantes hasta las 3:30. Y la respuesta es que las estudiantes pueden hacer actividades extras durante ese tiempo, también tiempo de estudiar y actividades así.
Is the school considering how to address the needs of students that have suffered emotionally and socially from not being in school? Absolutely. We know that this has been traumatic for students on a number of levels. Just to speak really candidly, we've had students that have lost parents, have students that have lost grandparents, have students that, that have lost close family members that aren't parents or grandparents, as well as the emotional toll that this takes on everyone. And so Joe, Jesse, Sarah have worked extremely hard to make sure that those students, that we know about are supported. And I know that teachers, it's on the forefront of their minds as well. So SEL is something that we've worked hard, and I know that it's something as we move into in-person instruction, we're going to find more need. And so we're going to have to respond to that need as well.
La pregunta es cómo vamos a responder a las necesidades de las estudiantes emocionalmente y socialmente durante ese tiempo muy duro. Y la respuesta es sí, entendemos que ese es un tiempo de trauma, que muchos estudiantes han tenido un tiempo duro. Para hablar francamente, algunos estudiantes han perdido padres, abuelos, personas cercanas a ellos y entendemos que ese es un tiempo muy difícil. Por eso tenemos Joe, Jesse y Sarah que están trabajando duro para las estudiantes que conocemos que han perdido o tienen un tiempo duro en su vida, y cuando sabemos más y entendemos que más estudiantes necesitan apoyo, vamos a responder así también.
Great. Can you opt out of in-person instruction anytime after April 12th?
Want me to take that?
Yes, go for it.
Absolutely. So if you have selected in-person instruction and for whatever reason you would like to convert back to remote learning, that is an option anytime that you can pull your kids back into remote learning. It is going to be much harder if you select remote learning and want to convert to in-person. We're not saying that the selection survey locks you for the rest of the year. We are just going to have some gateway points because of staffing and building capacity. So we're still working through what that will look like. We want to get through the first round of the surveys. But if you indicate in person and then you decide you want to pull back and stay
si escogemos que las estudiantes asisten al colegio el 12 de abril, pero después no queremos que estén en persona, ¿podemos llevarlas para hacer el aprendizaje virtualmente? Es la pregunta. Y la respuesta es sí. Para cualquier razón, puedes tener que la estudiante está estudiando virtualmente. Por ejemplo, es más fácil que la estudiante empieza en persona y después va para virtual. Van a estar mucho más difícil si escoges que la estudiante es virtual y después quieres ir en persona. Eso es solamente porque tenemos que saber los números en el principio. No estoy diciendo que no pueden ir en persona si empiezas a escoger virtual, pero van a estar más difícil. Entonces, la primera indicación en el formulario van a ayudarnos mucho.
Why not start in person on February 8th until instead of April 12th? Erin, do you want to?
Sure. A couple of reasons. First, we want to make sure we are mindful for staff and that we have enough time for staff to acclimate coming back. We're working diligently for vaccines for our staff members, and also to build a bridge so that we can start small. We know it's important for community care and for kids to have access to the building, but we also need to make sure that at this point, it will be a year since a lot of kids have been in any school building, that there is appropriate time for professional development and we can make this as strong and successful as possible. So we need the time while teachers are also continuing to teach in this remote environment. Unlike the summer where we have 2 weeks of dedicated professional development before kids come back, we don't have that right now. So we're having to build professional development into the school calendar. And we want to allow for just a bridge, a slow on-ramp, so that everyone feels comfortable coming back to the building by April 12th.
La pregunta es por qué no estamos empezando en persona el 8 de febrero. Y primero queremos estar pensando en nuestros profesores y otra gente que está trabajando en el edificio. Las están empezando para tener la vacuna y están listos para regresar en el tiempo que hemos empezado con el plan. También eso es para que tenemos un puente para empezar con un parte chiquito y crecer con esto. Y estamos haciendo esto con Community Care, estamos empezando con esto y también los niños no han estado en el colegio por un año. Eso es mucho tiempo y queremos que las profes tienen desarrollo profesional para estar listo para todos los cambios. Entonces, para repetirlo, es para tener un puente para empezar lentamente, para que tenemos más capacidad para tener éxito con ese plan.
What are the chances of the school year being extended into the summer this year, outside of the extended sort of like time that students may have to finish the summit platform based on individual student needs? Our plan it does not include having summer school at this point in time.
La pregunta es si vamos a extender el tiempo de la enseñanza hasta más tiempo en el verano. Y hablando de la plataforma Summit, puede ser más tiempo con esto, pero más tiempo de tiempo instruccional no vamos a tener más tiempo. Tenemos el plan normal para el año del colegio.
Let's see. Can you wear a face shield instead of a face mask? Unfortunately, no.
Unless you have a medical exemption, a medical note, we are requiring the mask. That is CDC guidelines that the masks will be worn. You can wear a face shield over the mask, but we do need the masks.
La pregunta es, ¿puedes usar una máscara enfrente de la cara en vez de la máscara por la boca? Y la respuesta es no. Solamente si tienes una exempción de un médico, puedes usar la shield en frente de la cara en vez de la tapaboca. Erin, did you say that they can, if they have a medical exemption, they can just use the shield?
We would need the doctor's note, and we can work. I just want to be mindful of ADA. So if there's a medical exemption, we will work directly with the family on how that works.
Si hay un caso, podemos trabajar con la familia si hay una nota de un médico.
I'm going to jump down to a question that I might need Erin's help on. If a teacher has health issues and hasn't been able to get the vaccination by April 12th, can they teach remotely?
We are, our expectation is that all teachers will be back on campus by March 15th. We are working individually with staff members. I am working individually with staff members that have expressed concerns or have medical issues in terms of not returning. So we will work in, that's a very individual question for a specific staff member and what their circumstances are. So right now, our expectation is that all staff will be back on March 15th. And we actually just emailed staff today. We're working diligently on some options for the vaccine for staff. So we're confident that staff will be vaccinated by the April 12th date.
La pregunta es si una profesora tiene algunos problemas con su salud y no pueden recibir la vacuna todavía en ese tiempo, ¿tiene que enseñar en persona o pueden enseñar virtualmente? Y la respuesta es, nuestras expectativas son que todos los profesores están en el colegio el 15 de marzo. Entonces, si hay casos individuales, yo estoy hablando con esos casos para que ellos puedan recibir la vacuna. También estamos trabajando con todos los profes con un plan rapidito recibir la vacuna lo más pronto que posible. Pero para los casos individuales estoy hablando uno por uno.
If we opt into community care, does the student have to go the full week? Or can the student only go 2 or 3 days out of the week? Because of the logistics and like the attendance taking and needing to track down students that are not in attendance and find out the reasons why they're not in attendance, we want students to attend 5 days a week. Just because it becomes a logistical nightmare to understand, these 12 students come Monday through Thursday, but not on Friday. These students come Monday and Tuesday. It's difficult to manage from just from an operations standpoint.
La pregunta es si las estudiantes están en community care, tienen que ir los 5 días o pueden ir 2 o 3 días. Y la respuesta es que queremos que las asistencias de las estudiantes son 5 días. Si no están en la asistencia en el colegio, tenemos que llamar y averiguar por qué no están. Y eso es una pesadilla logístico para manejar más para el parte de operaciones. Entonces, queremos que las estudiantes estén por 5 días.
Does community care end at 3:30 on Wednesday too? Community care ends at 1 o'clock on Wednesday. Our community care leads do professional development along with the rest of us, some specific professional development to their circumstances, but also participate in our all staff meetings as well. There's required trainings that they have to do and things like that that we do during that time too.
La pregunta es si community care termina a las 3:30 miércoles. La respuesta es no, termina a las 1 el día de miércoles, el tiempo de community care, y eso es para el desarrollo profesional que tenemos esos líderes que tienen que hacer, especialmente para esos tipos de circunstancias, y también desarrollo profesional con las profes en que están trabajando.
What happens if a child starts to feel ill in school? Will it be the same protocol as it was pre-COVID? It depends. Nurse Jay, do you want to talk about since you're here, can I call on you to talk about what happens if a student starts feeling ill? Depends on whether or not they're COVID symptoms or not, first of all, but go ahead, Nurse Jay.
Okay, so what we do, we remove the student from the classroom, and we have a care room where they will stay until mom and dad can come and pick them up. And then if they have sisters or brothers, we have to remove them too from the class. Okay, and then we will call the parents, let them know. Aaron, is it going to be the same thing as far as them coming back?
She had to step off, but those will update with guidelines on what steps need to be taken.
Okay.
It may not be the same right now, Nurse Jay, as it was.
Okay.
La pregunta es, ¿qué pasa si un niño no siente bien en el colegio? ¿Es lo mismo de antes de COVID o ha cambiado? Y la respuesta es que depende. Si hay síntomas de COVID, es un poco diferente. La enfermera Nurse J dijo, primero vamos a removerlos del clase y ponerlas en un cuarto para cuidar hasta los padres pueden recoger el niño. También tenemos que remover los hermanos del niño, si tiene hermanos, para estar en este cuarto también. Si son esos tipos de síntomas. Y para las próximas etapas, para regresar al colegio, tenemos que preguntar el distrito para más información.
Looks like there might be a link to some vaccine stuff that we should take a look at, Melissa, Claire. If all staff has to be on campus by 3:15, why can't in-person learning start then? Great question. Staff needs time to prepare on campus. A lot of these rooms, first of all, are still like sort of in the state that they were during the summer, meaning everything is packed up. The bulletin boards are bare. Like it's not a room that's ready for students to enter, and to say like to our staff, we're going to start on this day that you're required to be here, doesn't give them the amount of time that they need to make sure that that environment is conducive to learning. There's also some learning and some professional development that staff members need to do to understand how they're going to teach in the building, what the safety protocols are, what they're responsible for enforcing in the building, what their role in the building is, how they need to keep themselves safe. And so we felt like it was best to start slow with staff and allow them the opportunity to come in, teach from the building without the added responsibility of having to do in-person instruction at that point in time.
La pregunta es si todas las que trabajan allá están en el 315, porque no vamos a empezar instrucción en persona en ese día. Y la respuesta es que las profesores necesitan tiempo para preparar. Por ejemplo, las salones de enseñanza son los mismos del verano, entonces todo está empacado, no hay nada en toda la clase, entonces ellos necesitan tiempo para empezar con esto. Y también tenemos que enfocar en desarrollo profesional durante ese tiempo, con guías y seguridad que ha cambiado, también responsabilidades y papeles que han cambiado para ellos, para cuidar sus mismos y también todos los niños que están allá. Entonces queríamos que los profes están empezando sin los niños allá para no tener esta responsabilidad extra mientras esas otras responsabilidades y entrenamiento.
Yeah. And I understand the ramp is long, but it's long for that reason. The teachers need the time, to get like at the point in time where this came out, we had no idea that the vaccination was going to roll as quickly as it was. One consideration, some of the things that were said were that teachers could start getting vaccinated into February, beginning of March, and it seems like things may be going quicker here in Chicago right now. My hope is that continues. Our intention is to provide the childcare that we know parents need. We know it's not a substitute for in-person learning, while at the same time giving our staff the time that they need to get vaccinated, to keep themselves safe, and to get ready to come into the building. Let's see.
También quiero decir que yo entiendo que eso es lento, pero queremos que esté lento para que todos tienen tiempo para preparar. Cuando empezamos con ese plan, no sabíamos que la vacuna y la distribución van a estar tan rápido como es. Entonces, queremos tiempo para los profes pueden recibir la vacuna con la intención que vamos a empezar el community care, porque sabemos que las familias necesitan ese tipo de cuidado. Yo sé que eso no es un sustituto para la instrucción en persona, pero también queremos que empezar esto lento y dar tiempo para cada parte.
COVID symptoms are sometimes the same as many others. My kid is allergic to banana and she ate one at school and got sick and had to quarantine for 14 days for an allergic reaction. Submitted a doctor's letter, but that was not sufficient. Will this still be the same? I don't know for a fact whether that, has changed significantly in the time. What I can say is that we're following the guidelines set out by the Illinois Department of Health and the CDC. I understand your frustration in that scenario. My hope is that you understand that it's coming from a place of being extremely cautious and careful with all our students. And I know that can be frustrating.
La pregunta es, ¿qué vamos a hacer si las síntomas de COVID son los mismos que otros síntomas que pasan con otros tipos de enfermedades o reacciones? Por ejemplo, un niño tenía una reacción alérgica y tenía que estar en cuarentena por 14 días, aunque tuvimos una nota del médico. ¿Qué hacemos con esto? Siguiendo. Y si eso van a cambiar. Y la respuesta es, yo no sé si eso van a ser el mismo caso. Yo sé que tenemos que seguir las guías que están mandadas por el CDC y también el Departamento de Salud. Y yo entiendo, es muy frustrante si no era de la enfermedad, pero espero que ustedes entiendan que es por ser cautivo con todos los niños y la seguridad y salud de todos.
And I think also to note, Mr. Keebler, too, with that is that the Chicago Department of Health requires that negative COVID test. So that quarantine could have been earlier if there was the negative COVID test in conjunction with the doctor's note. But I totally understand not wanting to put your kids through that. I have a 5-year-old that's had like 8 COVID tests so that he can go back into the school building. So I empathize with not wanting to do that if you're confident that there's no COVID.
Y también Ms. Farnberg dice que también pueden acompañar con un examen de COVID negativo. Pueden empezar el proceso de cuarentena para hacerlo más corto o para empezar rapidito, pero yo entiendo que muchos no quieren que los niños tener ese tipo de examen si ustedes están seguros que no es COVID. Yo entiendo, mi hijo ha tenido ese tipo de examen de COVID 8 veces y no es divertido. Entonces yo entiendo.
If protocol permits, parents would be willing to help to get the classrooms ready. I appreciate that. Right now, we can't have visitors in the building, but when and if that changes, we'll definitely lean on parent support. Is there anything parents along the same lines? Sorry, Molly, but I'll just knock this out. Is there anything parents can do to help? Do classrooms need supplies, etc.? This is something that we're actively talking about in our instructional leadership team meetings as a staff. What is it that we need right now? And we're currently trying to figure that out. And when we know, we will communicate out with you guys.
La pregunta es si siguiendo el protocolo puede ser que las padres pueden ayudar con las clases y para empezar para poner cosas en el edificio, y ahora no podemos permitir visitantes en el edificio, y si eso cambia yo puedo decir que pueden tener visitantes para ayudar con esto. Pero yo aprecio ese tipo de apoyo muchísimo. Y la otra pregunta es cómo pueden los padres ayudar con todo esto, que necesitan cada salón, y estamos hablando con todos que trabajan allá y las profesoras, y el momento que sabemos vamos a comunicarlo a todos ustedes. Yo aprecio muchísimo.
Will students be able to keep their personal school supplies in school safely, or will they need to take them home every day? I think basic school supplies they can leave at school. Things that are important, things that they don't want damaged or can't survive being sprayed down with the electromagnetic spray, they would want to take home. And then computers probably should be taken home in case there's a situation where a class has to be quarantined.
Same with workbooks too. Same with like academic workbooks for our younger students.
La pregunta es si estudiantes, si las herramientas de los estudiantes pueden quedar en el colegio o si los estudiantes necesitan llevarlos a la casa cada día. Y la respuesta es las cosas que usan cada día y que son herramientas básicos pueden quedar en la salón, pero si es algo especial o algo personal que el niño no quiere quedar en la clase y para tener el spray electromagnético para quitar las enfermedades, yo aconsejo para llevar esto para la casa. También vamos a mandar la tecnología para la casa en el caso de algo y también los libros del, por ejemplo, cada tema, por ejemplo, matemáticas, la lectura para los niños más chiquitos. Vamos a mandar estos todos los días.
Sorry, there's some interpersonal issues happening between my sons outside the store, I think. Do you think kids will need to be vaccinated to attend the new school year? I doubt it. The vaccination right now is only approved to, I think, 16 in one instance. I think the Moderna and then the other one is approved to 18 and up. So right now it's not even like sort of like hasn't been tested in the same way to my knowledge in children. So
La pregunta es si ustedes piensan que los niños tienen que estar vacunados antes que el año nuevo del escolar, y yo dudo esto porque la vacuna solamente es para los 16 y más adulto, y la otra vacuna es para 18 y más, y no hay exámenes por los niños todavía con la vacuna, entonces no creo.
okay. There's a reading and math test in January and in May when they return back in person. Will they again have the reading and math test with the teacher? So there are two tests that we take typically in the springtime. One of which is the Illinois Assessment of Readiness. That's a federally mandated standardized test that the entire state takes. And then the other is the NWEA test. And that's mandated by the city. The Illinois Assessment of Readiness, they have not said whether or not this would be something that we're taking this year. So we're waiting to hear more guidance from the state. There was a federal sort of like delay on the type of testing that this falls under. So for example, the access test that many of our bilingual students or students that speak two languages take, trying to use student first language there, Ms. Mark, in January was postponed. And so we're waiting to hear if the IAR will be postponed as well. We don't know. My hope is that we do take the NWEA in the spring because we need to know where our students are. The last time they took this test was in the winter for most of them. We just finished hosting a week of testing for students that are trying to get into academic centers. And that went really well. I don't know how we do that on a whole school level, the way that we did it for this one. But I think that the information that we get from those exams is invaluable. And so my hope is that we will, but I don't have any guidance from the state or the city on whether or not they will happen. Sorry.
La pregunta es acerca de los exámenes grandes que toman los niños en la lectura y en matemáticas, y la respuesta es que hay dos exámenes grandes que toman los niños. El primero es el examen de Illinois, y eso está mandado federalmente, y también el que se llama NWEA, que es mandado por la ciudad. Ellos no han dicho si estamos tomando cada examen. El federalmente está retrasado. Por ejemplo, el examen de Access para los niños bilingües está retrasado y no han dicho si van a tomarlo. Y también yo espero que ellos sí van a tomar los exámenes en la primavera porque recibimos mucha información sobre los niños en esos exámenes, pero todavía no sabemos. Hemos tenido una muy buena semana de exámenes para los niños más grandes que quieren asistir centros académicos y ellos han hecho muy buen hecho con esto. Entonces, porque la información que recibimos de esos exámenes son muy buenos. La respuesta es que yo no sé, pero espero que estamos tomando estos exámenes en la primavera.
The decision on whether the format will be 2-1-2 or the other will that be an all school or grade level or class by class? Great question. I think right now the thinking is that it needs to be whole school because of siblings and things like that. However, that isn't something that we've discussed at great depth in our director's calls. So I think as it comes up, that'll be something that is, a little more thoroughly discussed. Sorry, I've got a 3-year-old that's working over here on putting shoes on. So.
La pregunta es acerca del el horario de 2-1-2 con la capacidad de estudiantes y la decisión con esto puede ser acerca, la pregunta era si vamos a hacer eso grado por grado o todo el colegio. Y la respuesta es, me imagino por todo el colegio porque de hermanos en el colegio. No hemos hablado tanto con esto en nuestras reuniones de directores, pero me imagino que vamos a discutir esto mucho más, que eso puede ser un plan posible.
We don't know until the forms are returned, but based on surveys we've taken thus far, can you say for reference how many have indicated interest in return to in-person versus desire to stay remote? We only have, I think, 79 surveys in so far. Is that right, Melissa? Off the
Yeah,
top.
from the last time we looked, I think, which was right before this call, maybe around 80, something like that.
Yeah, so it's really hard. It's really hard to kind of figure out whether or not what it's going to look like at this point in time.
In October, it was 33% wanted an in-person option, but that's, back in October.
La pregunta es acerca si sabemos cuántos estudiantes quieren asistir en persona. Y la respuesta es que solo hemos recibido 80 formularios. Entonces, no sabemos porque no hemos recibido la cantidad para saber. Pero en octubre tuvimos 33% que querían estar en persona. Entonces, tenemos esa información de octubre.
Great. That is the end of the questions in the chat. I'll just say, and if something comes in, we'll address it. But I just want to say thank you to everybody for taking the time to come and ask questions and get a better sense of all of this. I know how challenging it is, and I appreciate your flexibility and your willingness to work with us and support your students. So, thank you.
Quiero decir muchas gracias para todos ustedes para dar tu tiempo para preguntar, para estar aquí, para hablar. Yo sé que eso es un reto. Yo aprecio tu tiempo para tener una mejor idea sobre ese plan. Yo sé que eso es muy difícil, pero apreciamos todos ustedes. Muchas gracias.
Thank you, guys. Have a good night.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Good job, Mr. Keebler and Ms. Feinberg.
Thanks, Nurse Jay.
See you tomorrow.
And Ms. Mark,
Yeah, Miss Mark.
Oh, yes, Miss Mark.
real MVP.
I should have said thank you to you earlier, Molly. I'm so sorry that I didn't. I really appreciate it. Oh no, come here. Come here. I know, I'm gonna help. I'm gonna help. This one.
Muchas gracias por la información.
Con gusto.
Oh my goodness. Look at that. Is that a good looking shoe? Do you like it?
Sad kid.
The struggle is real. Can't get your shoes on. I mean, buddy.
Okay, bye everyone.
I put people in the waiting room. Hold
Oh.
on, wait.